Well now, look who wandered in just before dream time. Welcome, my dear traveler, to the Academy of Sleep. I'm Grandpa Ryan, your humble guide through old stories, quiet wonders, and the kind of history they don't rush to tell you in school. The kind that drifts like sea foam and lingers like a bedtime breeze. Now, before your eyelids start doing that little sleepy dance, why not tap that subscribe button? Go on. Do it now. You'll thank yourself in the morning. And then, we'll begin. The most real conspiracy theories. Shadows of truth and mystery. Introduction. Before we begin, take a moment to settle in. Close your eyes if you haven't already. Notice the feeling of your body resting against your bed or chair. With each gentle breath, imagine a wave of relaxation washing over you, from the top of your head down to your toes. As you breathe in, allow any tension to drift away. As you breathe out, let go of the day's thoughts and worries. There's nothing you need to do right now, except listen, relax, and let curiosity carry you towards sleep. Tonight, we invite you on a different kind of journey. A calm, thoughtful exploration into some of the world's most famous and most plausible conspiracy theories. Here at the Academy of Sleep, we believe in the power of questioning, the value of evidence, and the importance of calm, rational thinking. That's why in this lecture, we'll take you through the stories, the claims, and most importantly, the facts. For each chapter, we'll lay out the conspiracy theory, explain why it has captivated so many minds, and then calmly examine the real evidence. We'll share what's known, what's suspected, and what the official position is. In some cases, you'll find there are genuine mysteries and unresolved questions. In others, you'll see how facts have been stretched, misunderstood, or taken out of context. Our goal is not to scare, but to inform, and to give you a balanced, reasoned perspective. So, as you listen, feel free to let your mind wander. You don't need to decide what's true or false tonight. Just follow the stories, listen to the reasoning, and enjoy the gentle unraveling of some of the most enduring mysteries of our modern age. Let's begin our journey, where skepticism meets sleep, and truth is found not in shouting, but in quiet, careful thought. Chapter 1. The Moon Landing. A giant leap or a Hollywood illusion. Let your body relax as we return to one of the 20th century's most astonishing events, humanity's first steps on the moon. Or was it? This story is not only about rockets and astronauts, but about suspicion, unanswered questions, and the enduring power of illusion. On July 20th, 1969, the world watched in awe as Neil Armstrong took his legendary step onto the moon's surface. But for many, those black and white images broadcast into living rooms around the globe have never felt quite right. Was this really a triumph of science and bravery, or a dazzling performance carefully crafted to inspire and to deceive? The moon landing conspiracy theory is built on a foundation of persistent doubts. Skeptics point first to the American flag, which seems to ripple and wave in the airless vacuum of the moon. In video footage, the flag flutters as it is planted, an impossible sight in a world with no wind. The explanation from believers: on a film set, a flag would behave exactly this way, caught by a hidden breeze or a stagehand's touch. Photography raises even more questions. The astronauts' suits and lunar surface are starkly lit, yet shadows often point in different directions, as if lit by multiple sources. Objects supposedly standing in the same sunlight look mismatched, one bright, the other shadowed. To theorists, this suggests stage lighting, not the harsh, undisturbed rays of the distant sun. They ask why in every picture the sky above is pitch black, empty of stars. Shouldn't the stars be blazing, with no atmosphere to dim their light? Perhaps, say skeptics, the omission was deliberate, to avoid astronomical errors on a fabricated set. Then comes the scale of the feat itself. In 1969, computers were less powerful than modern calculators, yet NASA claims to have sent astronauts 384,000 kilometers to the moon, landed safely, and returned, not once, but 6 times in just a few years. Since then, not a single human has set foot beyond low Earth orbit. Why did this grand era end so abruptly, despite advances in every field of technology? Conspiracy theorists wonder if the answer is simple. Perhaps it never happened in the first place. Whistleblowers and authors like Bill Kaysing have fueled the fire, claiming to have seen documents or heard confessions from insiders who described the mission as a staged event. But if the landing was a hoax, who could make it believable on such a scale? This is where the Hollywood theory enters, one of the most captivating and enduring ideas in the moon landing debate. After all, just a year before Apollo 11, director Stanley Kubrick had stunned the world with 2001, A Space Odyssey, a film so realistic it made audiences question what was real and what was possible. The rumor is that NASA, desperate for a convincing illusion, recruited Kubrick himself to direct the lunar landing scenes. NASA advisors were involved in his film, and Kubrick was known for his obsessive attention to detail, especially in his portrayal of space. Was it coincidence or preparation for something much bigger? Believers analyze every frame of the Apollo footage and Kubrick's films, searching for clues. The slow, deliberate movements of the astronauts on the moon recall the wire work of Hollywood's best special effects. The lighting, the backgrounds, even the lunar dust seem suspiciously cinematic. The shining surfaces, perfectly framed shots, and missing stars all point to the skilled hand of a director. Kubrick himself is rumored to have left secret confessions. In his film, The Shining, theorists find a cryptic trail: the child's Apollo 11 sweater, the mysterious Room 237, a number closely to the average distance from Earth to the moon, in thousands of miles, and scenes that, they say, hint at guilt and secrecy. Some believe Kubrick became a recluse out of fear for his life, and that his sudden death decades later was no accident. Other details deepen the intrigue. Some point to the absence of a blast crater beneath the lunar module, as if it had been gently placed on a set. Footprints in the lunar soil appear sharp, but skeptics argue they don't match the treads of the astronauts' boots. Radio transmissions, theorists claim, could have been simulated, especially if the whole event was filmed in secret on Earth. Why, ask supporters of the theory, would the U.S. government create such a spectacle? The answer is simple: to defeat the Soviet Union in the space race, inspire the American public, and justify vast spending on technology and defense. In a world shaken by Cold War tensions and national doubt, nothing would unite and uplift the nation like a cosmic victory, even if it was only an illusion. Through the years, the debate has grown. Documentaries, books, and countless websites present proof on both sides. Some even claim that later missions Apollo 12, 14, and so on, were quietly canceled or covered up as interest faded and technology advanced enough to reveal flaws in the original story. Yet, the official position has never wavered. NASA, scientists, and engineers insist the moon landings were entirely real. The fluttering flag is explained by motion and the lack of air resistance. When the pole twists, the flag ripples, then settles. The stars are invisible in photographs because the cameras were set for bright daylight exposure, making faint starlight disappear. Shadows fall oddly on the moon's surface due to its unique reflective properties and the wide, harsh sunlight. As for Kubrick, there is no credible evidence he or anyone else in Hollywood faked the missions. The technical challenges and secrecy required would have been impossible to sustain. Decades later, independent observers, radio telescopes, and satellites have confirmed the existence of landing sites, and lunar retroreflectors still bounce lasers back to Earth as silent proof. The absence of further missions is explained by cost, shifting political priorities, and the focus on new challenges like space stations and Mars. The rocks brought back from the moon have been analyzed worldwide, found nowhere else on Earth, and are often cited as undeniable evidence of the mission's reality. Chapter 2, 9/11. What did we really see? It was an ordinary September morning, the kind of day when the world goes about its business, unaware that everything is about to change. As the sun rose over New York City, planes crossed the sky, and thousands of people began their daily routines. Then, at 8:46 a.m., a passenger jet struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Just 17 minutes later, a second plane hit the South Tower. What followed was chaos, horror, and a flood of images that would be etched into the memory of a generation. But almost immediately, questions arose. Some people looked at the footage and wondered if there was more to the story than the official reports revealed. For many, the events of September 11th, 2001, were not just an act of terror, but possibly something darker. An inside job, a carefully orchestrated event designed to reshape the world. The first question conspiracy theorists ask is about the collapse of the towers. On live television, the buildings seemed to fall, not just as a result of the plane impacts, but in a way that looked remarkably similar to controlled demolitions. The twin towers dropped straight down at near free-fall speed, their steel skeletons disintegrating in a cloud of dust. Advocates of the theory point to the symmetry, the speed, and the suddenness of the collapse. Could jet fuel really melt steel beams? Many insist that the fires alone should not have been enough to bring down the towers so completely. Then there is the case of World Trade Center 7, the third skyscraper that fell later in the day. No plane hit Building 7, yet around 5:20 p.m., it collapsed into its own footprint, just like the towers. Skeptics argue that this collapse, largely unreported in the early days, is a key piece of the puzzle. They ask why the building went down so perfectly, and why government officials seem to anticipate its fall hours before it happened. Other details add to the web of suspicion. Video evidence appears to show flashes of light or explosions at key moments during the tower's collapse. Some eyewitnesses reported hearing a series of blasts, one after another, echoing through the building. To many, this suggested the presence of explosives planted in advance. a classic sign of a controlled demolition, not an accidental collapse. There are also questions about the Pentagon attack. The damage to the building, theorists say, does not match what would be expected from a fully loaded passenger jet. Photographs from the aftermath show a relatively small hole in the outer wall, with little debris from a plane in sight. Some claim that the lack of visible wreckage, engine parts, and wing damage suggests something else hit the building, or that a missile, not a jet, was involved. Perhaps most troubling for conspiracy theorists are the stories of warnings and foreknowledge. Some officials reportedly canceled flights or avoided travel that day. Stock market activity showed unusual trading in the days before the attacks, with bets placed on airline stocks falling. To some, these details hint at advanced knowledge and secret planning among powerful groups. The question then becomes, who would benefit from such an event? For many, the answer lies in the aftermath. The attacks led directly to wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, dramatic increases in defense spending, and sweeping changes to surveillance laws through the Patriot Act. Some suggest that the tragedy provided the perfect justification for actions that were already on the table, a way to unite the country, rally public support, and reshape global politics. And yet the official story remains clear and firm. According to multiple government investigations, the 9/11 attacks were carried out by 19 hijackers linked to the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden. The buildings collapsed due to the massive impact of the planes and the fires that followed, which weakened the steel structure. World Trade Center 7, the reports say, fell because of uncontrolled fires that burned for hours, combined with structural damage from debris. The Pentagon was struck by American Airlines Flight 77, and the lack of visible wreckage was due to the high-speed impact and intense fire. Official sources dismiss all claims of inside involvement, hidden explosives, or foreknowledge as misunderstandings, coincidences, or the result of grief and confusion in the wake of tragedy. As you continue to drift, let your mind gently ponder these mysteries. Some questions may never have clear answers, but sleep comes easier when we remember to seek truth without fear, and to rest, knowing that both sides of every story deserve to be heard. Chapter 3. Big Pharma, Profits Before People. Let your breathing slow as you settle deeper into comfort. Imagine the world of medicine, a place of science, healing, and hope. For many, the pharmaceutical industry stands as a pillar of progress, responsible for life-saving drugs and miraculous treatments. But behind the polished image, a different story whispers, a story where profit and power may matter more than the well-being of ordinary people. The term Big Pharma refers to the vast interconnected network of pharmaceutical companies that dominate the global market. These corporations possess enormous influence. They fund medical research, lobby governments, and control the supply of many critical medicines. To those who believe in the conspiracy, this influence has been used not just for innovation, but to manipulate, conceal, and even endanger the lives of millions. Consider the story of suppressed cures. Whistleblowers and alternative medicine advocates claim that natural treatments and cheap drugs are sometimes hidden or discredited, simply because they threaten industry profits. They point to cases where researchers who discovered promising therapies for cancer, diabetes, or other diseases were suddenly silenced, their work dismissed or buried. Theorists ask, if a simple and unpatentable cure were found, would a trillion-dollar industry risk losing its profits? Or would it quietly make sure such discoveries never reach the public? Another pillar of the theory is the manipulation of research. Major drug trials are often funded and conducted by the companies themselves, raising questions about objectivity. Documents have surfaced showing that negative results are sometimes omitted, or that data is carefully spun to make drugs seem safer or more effective than they truly are. In some notorious cases, dangerous side effects were hidden from regulators only to be revealed after years of harm. Skeptics argue that when profits are at stake, even science can be twisted. There are stories of price gouging that seem to defy ethics and logic. Life-saving drugs, such as insulin or cancer treatments, have seen their prices skyrocket overnight. The conspiracy-minded say, this is not just business. It is an intentional effort to keep people dependent and desperate. With a few corporations controlling the patents, they can set any price they wish, knowing that patients have no choice but to pay. Then there is the question of the opioid crisis. Many believe that the explosive rise in prescription painkillers was not an accident, but the result of aggressive marketing and willful ignorance by pharmaceutical giants. These companies, it is argued, minimized the risks, exaggerated the benefits, and turned a blind eye as addiction rates soared. When lawsuits emerged, internal documents appeared to show executives discussing how to grow the market, even as the human cost became clear. Vaccine debates are another hotbed of suspicion. Some believe that vaccine schedules are driven more by profit than by public health, or that side effects are minimized and dismissed to maintain a steady stream of customers. Theorists point to cases where side effects, however rare, were not communicated openly, and where critics were labeled as quacks or conspiracists, silencing genuine debate. For many, the ultimate question is trust. With so much money at stake, can the pharmaceutical industry be relied upon to put patients before shareholders? The narrative of hidden cures, manipulated science, and profit-driven medicine offers a compelling, if unsettling, view of an industry that touches nearly every life on the planet. And yet, the official position is far more reassuring. Regulatory agencies, such as the FDA and EMA, enforce strict standards for drug approval, requiring rigorous trials and transparent data. While mistakes and misconduct have happened, these agencies argue that such cases are exceptions, not the rule. Most scientists and doctors stress that the overwhelming majority of research is honest, peer-reviewed, and focused on patient health. When prices soar, it is often due to the high costs of research and development, not simply greed. Vaccines, they say, are among the safest and most effective interventions in history, with risks far outweighed by benefits. The system is not perfect, but the consensus holds that science and regulation, not secret cabals, drive the progress of modern medicine. Chapter 4. The JFK Assassination, Lone Gunman, or Shadowy Plot. Picture a sunny November day in Dallas, 1963. The city buzzes with anticipation as President John F. Kennedy's motorcade winds through Dealey Plaza. Crowds line the streets, waving and cheering as the young president passes by. Then, in an instant, shots ring out. The president slumps forward, panic erupts. A nation's sense of innocence is shattered in a single haunting moment. For many, this is where the questions truly begin. The official story says that Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, fired 3 shots from the 6th-floor window of the Texas School Book Depository. He was arrested just hours later, only to be murdered himself by nightclub owner Jack Ruby before he could stand trial. But to countless investigators, writers, and ordinary citizens, the case never quite added up. The theory of a lone gunman seems almost too simple for such a seismic event. For decades, alternative narratives have flourished. Advocates of the conspiracy point to the magic bullet, the single piece of evidence that, according to the official Warren Commission, struck Kennedy and then Governor Connally, causing multiple wounds and emerging nearly pristine. Skeptics argue that the bullet's miraculous path defies the laws of physics, suggesting that more than one shooter must have been involved. Eyewitnesses recall hearing shots from multiple directions. Some say they saw smoke or movement behind a grassy knoll, a small hill overlooking the motorcade route. The idea of a second shooter, positioned in this spot, has become a central pillar of the theory that Kennedy's death was not the act of one disturbed man, but the result of a well-coordinated ambush. Then there are the questions about Oswald himself. He was a former Marine who had defected to the Soviet Union, returned with a Russian wife, and openly expressed pro-communist views. He held menial jobs and seemed to live a life marked by chaos and contradiction. How did such a man find himself in the perfect place at the perfect time to change history? Some suggest he was a patsy, an expendable pawn set up to take the blame, while the true masterminds vanished into the shadows. Suspicion naturally turns to motive. Who would want Kennedy dead? Some point to the CIA, angered by his handling of Cuba and the Bay of Pigs fiasco. Others suspect the Mafia, who saw their interests threatened by Kennedy's brother, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, and his war on organized crime. There are whispers of a military-industrial complex, worried that Kennedy was seeking peace rather than escalation in Vietnam. In this version of events, the assassination was not a random act, but a coup to redirect the course of American history. There are oddities in the evidence, too. Key witnesses died unexpectedly in the years after the assassination. Films and photos taken by bystanders were lost, damaged, or withheld from the public for decades. The Zapruder film, the most famous footage of the shooting, was locked away and only released in full years later. Documents about the assassination remained classified well into the 21st century, fueling suspicions that the truth was being deliberately kept from the public. Over the years, every detail has been scrutinized. The number of shots, the timing of the events, Oswald's movements, Ruby's motives. Each question, each contradiction, breathes life into the idea that the assassination was far more than it seemed. Yet, despite all the doubts, the official position remains unchanged. The Warren Commission and subsequent investigations concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. The magic bullet theory, while improbable to many, is explained through careful reconstruction and analysis. Most experts agree that eyewitness accounts can be unreliable, especially in moments of chaos. The presence of classified documents is attributed to protecting intelligence methods and sources, not to hiding a broader plot. In the end, the tragedy of November 22, 1963, remains one of history's most enduring mysteries, fueling speculation, but with no conclusive evidence to overturn the official account. Chapter 5. The Death of Princess Diana. Accident or conspiracy? Let your thoughts slow as we turn to another tragedy that shook the world. It is the final night of August, 1997. Paris is bathed in soft lights as a black Mercedes speeds through the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, pursued by photographers. Within minutes, Princess Diana, beloved by millions, lies mortally wounded. In the hours that follow, news of her death spreads across continents, leaving behind sorrow and a tide of questions. For many, the circumstances surrounding Diana's death have never felt truly settled. The official verdict is simple: a tragic car accident caused by a speeding driver under the influence of alcohol fleeing the relentless paparazzi. But to those who doubt, the details are far from convincing. Why, they ask, did so many things go wrong at once? Supporters of the conspiracy theory start with the driver, Henri Paul. He was the acting head of security at the Ritz Hotel, and blood tests showed a high level of alcohol in his system. Yet some point to footage from security cameras earlier that evening, claiming Paul did not appear intoxicated. Others suggest his blood samples were switched, contaminated, or even deliberately falsified to create a scapegoat. Attention quickly turns to Diana's relationship with Dodi Fayed. The couple had been under constant media scrutiny, but Dodi's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, claimed their love affair threatened powerful interests, perhaps even the British royal family itself. In his view, Diana's death was not random. She was, he believed, pregnant with Dodi's child, and the couple was soon to announce their engagement. To some, this was a threat to the monarchy's image and stability, enough to motivate a secret plot. Theories multiply around the actions of the French emergency services that night. Some say medical help was deliberately delayed. The ambulance carrying Diana stopped for a suspiciously long time, just a short distance from the hospital. Critics argue that faster, more decisive care could have saved her life. Was this simple misfortune, or did someone want to ensure she would not survive? There are claims about missing or malfunctioning surveillance cameras in the tunnel, and questions about why so little photographic evidence of the crash scene has ever been released. Some point to eyewitness accounts of blinding flashes in the tunnel, suggesting that a staged distraction or a strobe light caused the driver to lose control. Others recall Diana's own words. In the years before her death, she allegedly wrote letters warning that she feared a staged accident was being planned. Suspicions only grew as investigations continued. Several witnesses died under odd circumstances, while others claimed their statements were ignored or dismissed. To those who believe in a conspiracy, every missing piece, every unanswered question points to something larger, an orchestrated event, not a random tragedy. The press, too, played a role in feeding the theories. Headlines speculated about secret agents, clandestine meetings, and a cover-up reaching the highest levels of power. With every anniversary, new documentaries and books appeared, each weaving together threads of suspicion and doubt. But in the end, the official position stands firm. Multiple investigations, including a major inquiry by the British Metropolitan Police, known as Operation Paget, found no evidence of foul play. The cause of the crash, they concluded, was reckless driving by Henri Paul, exacerbated by his impairment and the intense pursuit by paparazzi. Tests and timelines have been repeatedly scrutinized, and no credible proof of a plot has ever surfaced. Diana's own medical condition, the sequence of the crash, and the response by emergency services, according to experts, were consistent with a tragic but accidental death. Chapter 6. The Federal Reserve. Who controls the money? As you relax deeper, let your thoughts drift to a different kind of power, one that is invisible, yet shapes the destiny of nations. Imagine the world's money flowing not in coins or bills, but in currents of digital signals, unseen and almost unknowable. At the center of this system sits the United States Federal Reserve, an institution surrounded by mystery, influence, and a steady stream of suspicion. The Federal Reserve, known simply as the Fed, was created in 1913 as America's central bank. Its stated purpose is to manage the nation's money supply, stabilize prices, and guide the economy toward steady growth. But for many, the Fed is something far more shadowy, a private cabal of bankers and elites quietly pulling the strings behind the scenes. Supporters of this theory point out that the Fed is unique among world institutions. It operates independently from direct government control. Its meetings are closed to the public. Its governors are appointed, not elected. Most strikingly, the 12 regional Federal Reserve banks are owned by private member banks, not by the American people or the government. The Fed has the authority to create money out of thin air, set interest rates, and influence everything from employment to inflation. Critics argue that this level of independence is suspicious. They ask, who really profits from the Fed's decisions? When interest rates are lowered, banks and investors often benefit the most. When markets crash, the Fed is quick to intervene to bail out financial institutions, sometimes at enormous cost to taxpayers. Theorists see a pattern. The ordinary citizen bears the burden, while the elite reap the rewards. There are historic quotes that fuel these doubts. Bankers like Meyer Amschel Rothschild are alleged to have said, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes its laws." The idea is simple and chilling. Real power belongs to those who manage the money, not those who pass the laws. The Great Depression, the recessions of the 1970s, the financial crisis of 2008. All these events are viewed by some as proof that the Fed's power is unchecked and perhaps even dangerous. Was it coincidence that the Fed's actions before the 1929 crash fueled a speculative bubble? Was it just bad luck that decades of easy credit led to a collapse in 2008? Or was this the result of secret meetings, closed-door decisions, and self-interest at the top of the financial world? The Fed's role in global affairs is another source of concern. Its policies affect not only the United States, but the entire world. When the Fed acts, currencies fluctuate, markets tremble, and nations are forced to respond. Some believe that this centralization of power is by design, a step toward a global financial system run by the same select few. From time to time, the Fed's leaders meet with international groups like the Bank for International Settlements, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. To conspiracy theorists, this is evidence that financial decisions are being coordinated at the highest levels, far from the eyes of voters or the press. Transparency, too, is a concern. For much of its history, The Fed resisted any public audits or oversight, citing the need for independence. When politicians called for more accountability, the response was often vague or dismissive. Theorists say that if there is nothing to hide, why the secrecy? Yet, the official position remains steady. The Federal Reserve, according to mainstream economists and policymakers, is structured for stability, not secrecy. Independence from politics is meant to prevent manipulation and ensure long-term economic health. The Fed's meetings and decisions are now more open than ever, with transcripts, reports, and press conferences published for public review. Its actions are subject to review by Congress, and its leaders are chosen by the President and confirmed by the Senate. While the Fed is not perfect and has made mistakes, most experts argue that it is essential for a modern, complex economy, and that the idea of a secret cabal running the world is a dramatic exaggeration. Chapter 7. Area 51 and Roswell, UFOs, Aliens, and Hidden Technologies. As your mind floats gently, picture a vast stretch of desert under a silent Nevada sky. The ground is dry, the mountains distant, and in the heart of this emptiness lies one of the most secretive and notorious sites in the world, Area 51. For decades, its very existence was denied, its perimeter patrolled, and its name spoken only in whispers. What really happens inside this forbidden zone? For many, the answer is simple. This is where the United States government hides its most extraordinary secrets, including the evidence of alien contact. The legend truly begins in 1947 with an event that would become famous as the Roswell incident. On a stormy night near Roswell, New Mexico, something crashed to Earth. Officially, it was a weather balloon, nothing more. But the first press release from the nearby military base said something else, that they had recovered a flying disc. Quickly, the story was retracted, the site was cleared, and witnesses were silenced. For those who believe, this is the moment when the world changed. When humanity's first encounter with beings from another world was hidden from view. Eyewitnesses in Roswell spoke of strange debris, metal that could not be bent or burned, and even rumors of small alien bodies. Some say that local undertakers were asked to supply child-sized coffins, while others claim to have seen unmarked trucks moving material in the dead of night. Over the years, more witnesses have come forward, each adding another piece to the puzzle. To true believers, the crash was not a weather balloon, but a craft from another world. And the government moved quickly to cover it up. Area 51 enters the story as the supposed destination for whatever was found in Roswell. Guarded by fences, cameras, and patrols, the base is said to house the remains of the craft, the bodies of its passengers, and even working alien technology. Whistleblowers like Bob Lazar have claimed to work at nearby facilities, describing in detail the supposed reverse engineering of otherworldly machines. Lazar told the world about hangars built into the side of mountains, with 9 saucer-shaped craft inside. He described a fuel unknown to science, gravity-bending engines, and secrecy so intense that even his co-workers knew only what they absolutely needed. The conspiracy theory doesn't stop at crashed UFOs. Many believe that the world's most advanced aircraft, from the U-2 spy plane to the SR-71 Blackbird, were built at Area 51, using technology gleaned from aliens. Lights in the sky, mysterious booms, and sightings of unexplainable objects have fueled the idea that the United States government is decades ahead in technology and keeping it all hidden. Declassified documents have revealed that top-secret aircraft testing really did take place at Area 51, and that the government lied about it for years. But to theorists, this is only a partial truth, a story told to distract from the real secret, that we are not alone in the universe, and that proof is already here on Earth. There are even whispers of a deeper partnership. Some claim that contact was established with extraterrestrials, and that in exchange for technology, the government allows limited abductions or experiments. This theory stretches the imagination, but for believers, it explains decades of sightings, cover-ups, and denials. Yet, as always, the official version is much more mundane. According to the U.S. government and the most scientists, Area 51 is simply a testing ground for advanced aircraft. The secrecy exists to protect military technology, not to hide aliens. The Roswell incident, they say, was the recovery of a secret balloon project called Mogul, meant to detect Soviet nuclear tests. The strange debris was explained, and the alien stories grew out of confusion, fear, and later, deliberate hoaxes. No credible evidence of alien craft or bodies has ever been produced, and whistleblower tales have been widely discredited. Chapter 8. Operation Paperclip. Nazi Scientists in America. Allow yourself to relax even deeper as we travel back to the closing days of World War II. Europe is in ruins. The war is all but lost for Nazi Germany, and Allied forces are sweeping across the continent. But behind the headlines of victory, a quieter and stranger operation is unfolding. Its name is Operation Paperclip, and for many, it represents a real-life conspiracy hidden in plain sight. Operation Paperclip was the secret program under which hundreds of German scientists, engineers, and technicians were brought to the United States after the war. These were not just any scientists. They included men who had designed rockets for Hitler, worked on experimental weapons, and in some cases were implicated in the crimes of the Nazi regime. The official story claims that this was necessary, a race to gather knowledge before the Soviets could claim it. But to many, Paperclip reveals a dark deal, where justice and morality were set aside for the promise of technological supremacy. The best-known figure among these scientists is Wernher von Braun, the mastermind behind the V-2 rocket. His work had devastated London and other cities, and it had been powered by forced labor in horrific conditions. Yet, within years, von Braun was working for the United States Army and later NASA, celebrated as a hero of the American space program. He and his team laid the groundwork for the rockets that would eventually send men to the moon. To conspiracy theorists, this is more than just a story of post-war pragmatism. They point out that many Paperclip recruits lied about their Nazi pasts, sometimes with the help of American officials who altered records and buried evidence. Files were classified or destroyed. War crimes were ignored or covered up. In the rush to beat the Soviet Union, moral lines were blurred or erased entirely. Some believe the influence of these former Nazis went deeper still. They note that the military-industrial complex that developed in the years after World War II often adopted not just the technologies of the Third Reich, but also its secrecy, its organizational methods, and its willingness to do whatever it took to win. Even as the world celebrated American achievements in science, The origins of much of this progress were left deliberately shadowy. There are claims that Paperclip scientists played a role in other secret projects, such as MKUltra or covert weapons development. Some theorists argue that these men helped establish a hidden culture of experimentation and espionage that would define the Cold War era. They see in Operation Paperclip the roots of a broader conspiracy where governments will always choose power over principle if the stakes are high enough. The story is also full of small details that raise questions. For years, the U.S. government denied the existence of Operation Paperclip, only admitting to it decades later when documents were declassified. Survivors and families of Nazi atrocities were horrified to learn that the very men responsible for suffering were given new names, new jobs, and a second chance in America. To some, this feels like a betrayal, a secret deal with the devil that shaped the post-war world. But according to the official position, Operation Paperclip was a strategic necessity in the dawning age of superpower rivalry. The Soviets were also recruiting German scientists, and losing the technological race could have been catastrophic. American officials admit that the operation required moral compromise, but argue that the knowledge gained was essential for both national defense and the peaceful exploration of space. Most historians agree that the program was real, its scope significant, but they see no evidence of deeper or more sinister motives beyond Cold War competition. The dark pasts of many scientists, while troubling, are seen as a difficult but calculated risk, taken in an era defined by existential threats. Chapter 9. The New World Order. Real agendas, or modern myth, breathe softly as we cross from the world of war and science into a web of power, secrecy, and global ambition. For decades, the phrase New World Order has appeared in speeches, headlines, and the fevered pages of countless books. But what does it really mean? And who, if anyone, is truly behind it? To believers in the New World Order conspiracy, the world is not guided by random events or simple politics. Instead, they see a hidden hand, an elite group of bankers, politicians, and business tycoons, quietly shaping the course of nations. The idea is that a small, interconnected group is working behind the scenes to create a single, unified global government. In this vision, national borders become meaningless, individual freedoms are quietly stripped away, and the public is distracted by entertainment, technology, and staged crises. The evidence for these claims, according to theorists, is everywhere and nowhere at once. They point to the same names cropping up in positions of power: the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, members of royal families, tech billionaires, and politicians whose family trees seem to connect in secret. They see international organizations like the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank as tools for centralizing power, softening up nations and moving them toward the same set of rules. There are moments in history that have fed these fears. In 1991, President George H.W. Bush gave a speech during the Gulf War using the phrase New World Order to describe a future where nations work together toward peace. For some, this was not just political language, but an open admission of a secret agenda. The signing of global trade agreements, the growth of multinational corporations, and the creation of powerful alliances like the European Union are all seen as steps toward a single system. Secret societies add fuel to the fire. Groups like the Freemasons, the Bilderberg Group, and the Trilateral Commission are often mentioned. These exclusive clubs hold private meetings, bringing together world leaders, bankers, and media executives. No press, no public, no records. Theorists argue that here, in smoke-filled rooms, real decisions are made, and public leaders are simply actors reading a prepared script. Technology and surveillance are also part of the story. Theorists point out that as our lives become increasingly digital, it becomes easier for those in power to track, influence, and control the masses. Cashless economies, digital IDs, and social credit systems are, in this view, not just about convenience, but about laying the groundwork for total control. Even events like wars, pandemics, and economic crashes are seen through this lens. Instead of random misfortune, they are interpreted as engineered crises, problems created so that the public will accept new solutions, often at the cost of their own rights and autonomy. Why would anyone pursue such a plan? For some, it is about money and power, concentrated in ever fewer hands. For others, it is about ideology, a belief that the world should be united, guided, and ultimately ruled by those who know best. And yet, the official position from governments, scholars, and mainstream media is clear. The world is too large, too complicated, and too chaotic for any single group to control it all. Secret meetings happen, but they are explained as opportunities for leaders to discuss shared challenges, not to plot global domination. The New World Order is described as a hopeful phrase for a more peaceful, cooperative world, not a blueprint for tyranny. International organizations, while powerful, operate in the open and are subject to the scrutiny of member nations and the public. Chapter 10. Chemtrails, Weather Control, or Vapor Trails. Let yourself relax even more, letting the world slip into the background as you gaze up, in your mind, at the wide open sky. Across the blue, white lines are painted, left by planes traveling far above. Most people see these as ordinary contrails, harmless trails of condensed water vapor. But for some, these streaks hold a deeper secret, marking the presence of a hidden operation known as chemtrails. The chemtrail theory claims that governments, or powerful organizations, are using aircraft to spray chemicals into the atmosphere for reasons ranging from weather modification to population control. The evidence, believers say, is right above us. They point to the unusual patterns and persistence of these trails. Sometimes the white lines spread out and linger for hours, covering the sky in a thin haze. Sometimes they crisscross, creating a checkerboard pattern. To those who suspect, these are not just normal exhaust. They are signs of a deliberate plan. Supporters of the theory cite increases in respiratory illnesses, strange weather, or sudden die-offs of plants and insects, all occurring in regions where chemtrails are most frequently observed. They share photographs and videos of planes fitted with strange nozzles or tanks, and stories from anonymous insiders who claim to have worked on the spraying projects. Some point to patent filings and declassified government projects that discuss weather modification, cloud seeding, or geoengineering. Real science, they argue, that proves such technology is not only possible, but already in use. The list of possible motives is long. Some believe chemtrails are used to manipulate the weather for military advantage, causing droughts or storms to weaken enemies. Others think the goal is to control the climate, blocking sunlight to fight global warming, or even to reduce the population by spreading disease or toxins. A few say it is a psychological operation meant to keep people distracted and anxious, always looking up for threat they cannot understand or control. The secrecy, according to believers, is enforced by government agencies, the military, and even commercial airlines. Pilots are kept in the dark or sworn to silence. Scientists who question the official story are ridiculed or lose their jobs. When members of the public try to raise concerns, they are dismissed as conspiracy theorists or told they do not understand atmospheric science. There are stories of whistleblowers who claim to have seen chemicals being loaded onto planes, or of researchers who find unusual metals, like aluminum, barium, or strontium, in rainwater after heavy spraying days. These stories circulate in online forums, at local meetings, and even in petitions to lawmakers, each adding to a growing sense of unease. But what does mainstream science say? According to meteorologists, chemtrails are simply contrails. Ice crystals formed when hot, humid exhaust from jet engines meets the cold air at high altitudes. The way contrails behave depends on temperature, humidity, and wind, not secret programs. The persistence or spreading of contrails is a natural phenomenon, not a sign of chemical additives. Studies of air and soil samples find only background levels of metals consistent with ordinary pollution, not mass spraying. Geoengineering does exist as a field of research, but real-world projects remain rare, carefully regulated, and public. For now, there is no credible evidence that widespread chemical spraying is occurring. Most scientists and aviation experts dismiss the chemtrail theory as a misunderstanding of basic atmospheric science, fueled by fear, coincidence, and the human tendency to seek patterns in the unknown. Chapter 11. The Suppression of Alternative Energy. What happened to free power? As your breathing settles, picture a world humming quietly with electricity. A world where the energy powering your home, your devices, even your dreams, could be limitless and nearly free. For more than a century, inventors and visionaries have dreamed of discovering new sources of power that would break the world's dependence on oil, coal, and gas. But according to some, every time a breakthrough appears on the horizon, it vanishes just as suddenly, buried by powerful interests. The theory of suppressed alternative energy claims that governments and corporations have deliberately hidden or destroyed inventions that could revolutionize how we create and use energy. Believers point to a long list of devices and patents often linked to names like Nikola Tesla, whose work hinted at ways to transmit power wirelessly, draw energy from the air, or unlock secrets of perpetual motion. Tesla's vision, they say, was for a world where energy flowed freely to all, clean, abundant, and unmetered. Supporters of the theory describe stories of inventors who developed water-powered engines, magnetic generators, or devices said to tap into zero-point energy, a mysterious force said to exist throughout the universe. Again and again, these inventors faced sudden obstacles. Their labs were raided, their patents seized, their reputations ruined, or their lives cut short under strange circumstances. Some claim that oil companies, energy conglomerates, and even intelligence agencies acted to protect the status quo, using legal threats, sabotage, or even violence to prevent disruptive and new technologies from seeing the light of day. There are public records of thousands of energy-related patents being classified by the U.S. government as sensitive or withheld on the grounds of national security. To the conspiracy-minded, this is proof of a coordinated effort to keep revolutionary inventions off the market. They argue that just a handful of breakthroughs, if released, could end global poverty, transform the environment, and break the grip of monopolies that profit from scarcity. Even mainstream news sometimes reports on inventors who claim to have created cars that run on water, engines that require no fuel, or solar panels that work at unheard-of efficiencies. Yet, after a brief flash of publicity, these stories fade, the prototypes disappear, and the world goes back to burning oil and coal. To believers, this is not a coincidence. It is the result of a system designed to prevent change, no matter the human cost. Why, they ask, would anyone want to stop free energy? The answer, they say, is simple: money and control. The global energy industry is worth trillions of dollars, and those at the top have every reason to protect their power. If energy were cheap, limitless, and available to all, entire economies would be transformed, and old hierarchies would collapse overnight. But according to the official story, things are more complicated. Governments and energy companies point out that the laws of physics are strict, and that many free energy devices simply do not work when tested rigorously. Tesla's ideas were brilliant, but not all were practical or scientifically proven. Many inventors who claim persecution have not provided solid evidence that their devices work, or have failed to replicate results under controlled conditions. The classification of patents, experts say, is done for national security, primarily to prevent weapons or dangerous technologies from falling into the wrong hands, not to hide life-changing inventions. Most engineers and scientists agree that while alternative energy is a real field, progress comes slowly and requires time, investment, and careful research. Breakthroughs are possible, but there is no credible evidence of a vast conspiracy to suppress working technology that could transform the world. Chapter 12. The Epstein Scandal: Networks of Power and Silence. Let your breath grow even softer as you turn your thoughts to a story that emerged not in the distant past, but in recent memory. A story that seems at times almost too sensational to be real. This is the tale of Jeffrey Epstein, financier, socialite, and the man at the center of a scandal that exposed the hidden links between money, power, and secrecy. Jeffrey Epstein was, by outward appearances, a successful and mysterious businessman. He moved in the highest circles, befriending presidents, royalty, academics, and celebrities. His private jets and mansions were legendary. His social calendar filled with some of the most influential people on Earth. But beneath the surface, a different world operated. A world built on exploitation, intimidation, and a chilling sense of impunity. For years, rumors swirled about Epstein's activities, allegations of abuse, blackmail, and the recruitment of underage girls for his own pleasure and the pleasure of his associates. Many people came forward with similar stories, yet the wheels of justice seemed to grind impossibly slow. In 2008, Epstein was convicted of a minor charge and served just over a year in a private wing of a county jail, allowed to leave during the day. To many, this light sentence was the first real evidence that Epstein's connections reached into the highest levels of law enforcement and government. The conspiracy theories surrounding Epstein are built on the idea that he was not acting alone. Believers point to the long list of powerful friends and guests who visited his island or attended his gatherings. Some say Epstein ran an international blackmail ring, secretly recording his guests and using the footage to control or manipulate them. Others suggest he worked as an asset for intelligence agencies, using his network to gather information and influence decisions at the very top. When Epstein was arrested again in 2019, hope briefly flickered that the full truth might finally emerge. But just weeks later, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell, officially ruled a suicide. The circumstances of his death only fueled suspicion. The cameras near his cell malfunctioned. Guards reportedly fell asleep or falsified logs, and key evidence seemed to vanish. For those already distrustful, this was not just a tragedy. It was a clear signal that powerful people had intervened to protect themselves. The web of connections stretches almost endlessly. Politicians, businessmen, and celebrities were all touched by the scandal. Some deny ever knowing Epstein. Others admit to friendships, but claim ignorance of his crimes. Names appear in flight logs, photographs, and testimony, but clear answers remain elusive. The sudden and suspicious deaths of some witnesses and associates have only deepened the sense of cover-up. Believers in the conspiracy argue that Epstein's operation was part of a much larger system, one where wealth and power are used to enable abuse, silence victims, and ensure that the most damaging secrets never come to light. They say the scandal exposed only the tip of the iceberg, and that networks like Epstein's may continue to operate, shielded by the same forces that protected him for so long. Yet, the official record is simpler and less dramatic. Investigations found that Epstein acted with the help of a small circle of associates, most notably Ghislaine Maxwell, who was later tried and convicted. The failures of the justice system were explained as bureaucratic mistakes, incompetence, or a lack of resources, not a coordinated cover-up. While some of Epstein's associates were powerful, no credible evidence has emerged that he operated at the direction of governments or intelligence agencies, or that a wider network is still active. Authorities argue that justice, though delayed, has been served as much as possible given the circumstances. As you let these tangled stories drift into silence, remember that sometimes the greatest mysteries are those hidden in plain sight. In the quiet, let the weight of unanswered questions grow lighter, and find peace in the knowledge that, even in a world of secrets, sleep offers a gentle escape from it all. Chapter 13. COVID-19. Origins, Motives, and the Web of Theories. Settle into your breath, letting your body grow heavier as we travel back to a time that is still fresh in memory. When headlines changed overnight, streets grew empty, and the ordinary routines of life were swept away by something invisible and unstoppable. The COVID-19 pandemic did more than change the world. It cracked open a storm of questions and suspicions, fueling 1,000 theories about what really happened and why. The official story begins in late 2019 with a cluster of mysterious illnesses linked to a seafood market in Wuhan, China. Scientists, doctors, and public health officials scrambled to respond as a new coronavirus swept across the globe, bringing with it uncertainty and fear. The virus, named SARS-CoV-2, was declared a pandemic in March 2020, and soon life everywhere was transformed. But from the earliest days, not everyone accepted the official narrative. Some looked at the scale, speed, and impact of the crisis and saw not an accident, but a plan. An event with causes and consequences far more complex than a simple act of nature. The lab leak theory, one of the first theories to gain traction, focused on the origin of the virus itself. The Wuhan Institute of Virology is home to advanced research on coronaviruses, and the pandemic's epicenter was just miles away. Some scientists and intelligence officials raised the possibility that the virus escaped from the lab, either through an accident, a sick worker, or improper disposal of waste. Whistleblowers, diplomatic cables, and past reports of safety concerns at the Institute all added fuel to the theory. Supporters argue that key information was quickly suppressed by Chinese authorities, who silenced journalists, destroyed early samples, and changed records. They point to the rapid, coordinated response as evidence that the full story has never been told. Unusual features in the genetic sequence of the virus are cited as possible signs of laboratory manipulation. Methods sometimes used in research to make viruses more transmissible for study. The planned pandemic theories. But the questions didn't stop at the virus's origins. Many began to wonder, if the pandemic wasn't just an accident, who might benefit? What motives could be hiding beneath the surface? The war on small business. One of the most persistent theories is that the pandemic, and especially the lockdowns, were used as a weapon against small businesses. Supporters of this idea note how the world's largest companies, tech giants, e-commerce platforms, and global chains grew richer and more powerful, while local shops, independent restaurants, and family businesses collapsed. Governments declared essential and non-essential businesses, closing millions of small enterprises while allowing big-box stores and online retailers to thrive. According to the theory, this was not simply a side effect, but the real goal: to concentrate more wealth and power in the hands of the top 1%, to break the backbone of local economies, and to make the world easier to control from the top down. A profitable pandemic for Big Pharma. Another prominent theory claims that the pandemic was engineered, or at least exploited, to generate massive profits for pharmaceutical companies. As the world waited for a solution, governments invested billions into vaccine research and guaranteed purchases, often with little oversight. Once vaccines became available, enormous contracts flowed to a handful of multinational corporations. Theorists point to the unprecedented speed of development, the use of emergency authorizations, and the legal immunity granted to vaccine makers. Some suggest that early, inexpensive treatments for COVID-19 were suppressed or discredited, not because they were ineffective, but because they threatened the planned profits from new patent-protected products, vaccines, and the infertility theory. A darker theory spread quickly in online circles, that the COVID-19 vaccines were designed not just to fight disease, but to alter the population itself. Some claimed the shots could cause infertility, disrupt hormones, or even change human DNA. Anonymous insiders, viral videos, and questionable studies were cited as proof. The rapid rollout, pressure to vaccinate, and calls for vaccine passports or mandates fueled suspicion. To believers, the campaign was not about public health, but about exerting control. Experimenting on millions. perhaps with lasting effects on human reproduction or genetics. Theories of control and social engineering. The pandemic also brought new waves of digital surveillance, contact tracing, and rules about where people could go, what they could do, and even what they could say online. Theorists argue that COVID-19 was used as a pretext to expand government power, erode privacy, and condition the public to accept more restrictions in the future. Quarantines, curfews, and mask mandates became flashpoints for debates over freedom and control. Others focused on the coordination of public messaging. They saw the same talking points repeated across media platforms and social networks, with dissenting voices censored or deplatformed. For some, this was proof that a global elite was using the crisis to rewrite the rules of society, test obedience, and prepare for a new world order where rights could be suspended at the stroke of a pen. Economic motives and the wealth transfer. Supporters of the wealth transfer theory note that during the pandemic, the world's richest individuals and largest corporations saw their fortunes skyrocket. Tech stocks soared as billions were forced to work, shop, and learn online. Central banks printed trillions, inflating asset prices and making the wealthy even richer. Meanwhile, ordinary workers lost jobs, savings, and security. Some see this as a deliberate strategy to deepen inequality, making more people dependent on government support and big business, Great Reset, and population control. Another theory, often called the Great Reset, holds that world leaders and organizations used the pandemic to push for sweeping changes to the economy, governance, and even daily life. Proponents cite statements by the World Economic Forum and other international bodies, which called the pandemic an opportunity to reset capitalism, address climate change, and promote digital identity. For some, this is seen as a cover for technocratic control, using fear to encourage people to accept radical new policies they would never tolerate in normal times. Some versions of the theory even claim the virus, or its response, was intended to reduce the world population, either through disease, economic hardship, or long-term health effects from the vaccines themselves. The official position. Through it all, scientists, doctors, and public health officials insist that COVID-19 was a natural event. The majority of studies point to the virus originating in bats, with a possible intermediate host before infecting humans, just as with previous outbreaks. While the lab leak theory has been investigated, there is no direct evidence of engineering or deliberate release. The global response, while imperfect, was driven by the urgency of a rapidly spreading pandemic, not by secret plans for profit or control. Vaccines, according to health agencies and peer-reviewed studies, are safe and effective, with no evidence that they cause infertility or genetic changes. The speed of their development was made possible by years of prior research and an unprecedented level of international cooperation. Pharmaceutical profits did soar, but supporters argue that without these companies, rapid development and mass distribution would have been impossible. Lockdowns and restrictions were enacted in response to public health needs, with the goal of saving lives and protecting hospitals. The economic pain was real, but not intentional, and was partially offset by emergency relief programs. Conspiracies about digital control, infertility, or mass depopulation are dismissed as the product of fear, misunderstanding, or deliberate misinformation. Chapter 14. The Manipulation of the Media. Are we being programmed? Let your body relax fully now, releasing the last bits of tension as you imagine the gentle glow of a television, a flickering phone screen, or the hum of a radio in the background. Information flows around us all day and night, shaping our beliefs, our fears, and even our dreams. But are we truly informed? Or are we quietly being programmed by unseen forces? Many believe that the mainstream media is not as independent or objective as it appears. Instead, they say, a small number of corporations and powerful individuals control the majority of what we see, hear, and read. 6 media giants own most television, radio, film, and news outlets in the United States. These conglomerates are tied by business interests, political donations, and social connections. The result, according to conspiracy theorists, is not an open marketplace of ideas, but a carefully curated stream of information designed to shape opinions and limit dissent. Supporters of this theory point to several patterns. News stories that challenge the status quo often vanish quickly, while topics that support the interests of the powerful are repeated endlessly. Certain narratives are amplified. Others are dismissed as conspiracy theories before any real investigation. Investigative journalists who dig too deep into sensitive issues may find their stories killed, their careers ruined, or their lives upended. Some claim that coordinated talking points are distributed to newsrooms, ensuring that major networks say the same thing in almost the same words at the same time. There are claims of direct government influence, too. During wars and crises, governments have been known to work closely with the press to manage public opinion, sometimes suppressing bad news or exaggerating threats. The Operation Mockingbird program, declassified years after the fact, revealed that the CIA once recruited journalists to spread propaganda and gather intelligence at home and abroad. To many, this proves that the media is not just a passive observer, but an active tool of power. Social media platforms, once hailed as champions of free speech, are also under suspicion. Algorithms decide what content we see and what disappears, often with little transparency. Critics argue that these platforms shadow ban controversial voices, promote certain viewpoints, and censor information at the request of governments or advertisers. Theorists warn that we are living in a world where our perceptions are shaped above always by invisible hands, nudging, guiding, and sometimes outright manipulating our beliefs and choices. Why would such control be exercised? The answer, they say, is simple: to maintain order, protect profits, and keep the population compliant. If people only hear what the powerful want them to hear, real change becomes impossible. Distraction, outrage, and fear are manufactured, keeping us divided and distracted from what really matters. Yet the official story is far less sinister. Media executives and journalists argue that the industry is competitive and that diversity of opinion is alive and well. Mistakes and biases happen, but these are the result of human error, not grand design. When stories disappear, it is usually for lack of evidence or public interest, not because of censorship. Laws in democratic countries protect press freedom, and while coordination exists, it is often about ensuring accuracy and clarity, not controlling thought. Social media platforms claim their moderation policies are meant to stop abuse and misinformation, not silence dissent. As you settle deeper into sleep, let the noise of headlines and hashtags drift away. Remember that while information shapes our world, it is your quiet mind that shapes your inner peace. Here, in the calm of night, you are free from persuasion, programming, and the endless chatter of the outside world. Let your mind rest easy, untangling from the web of stories, and allow yourself to simply be. Conclusion. Why we question. Healthy skepticism for restful sleep. Now, as we come to the end of our journey through shadows, secrets, and strange possibilities, let your mind settle. You have traveled through stories that inspire curiosity, suspicion, and sometimes fear. You have heard voices of doubt and voices of reassurance. You have seen how facts and mysteries can blur together, and how even the wildest theories sometimes grow from kernels of truth. It is natural to question the world around us. Curiosity is what drives science, art, and discovery. But as you drift toward sleep, remember that not every mystery needs to be solved tonight. The world is vast and complex, and sometimes the simplest answer is the truest one. Other times, the truth hides just beyond our reach, waiting for another day. Take a slow, deep breath. With every exhale, let your body grow heavier and more relaxed. Imagine any lingering worries or restless thoughts floating away, like leaves on a gentle stream. Trust that your mind can rest now, letting go of questions and theories, leaving them for tomorrow. Here at the Academy of Sleep, our goal is not to tell you what to believe, but to invite you to think with both reason and calm. Healthy skepticism is not about fear. It is about curiosity, openness, and a willingness to see the world from many sides. As you settle into the stillness of night, know that you are safe. Your breath is steady, your muscles soft, your thoughts quiet. All the world's secrets can wait until morning. For now, give yourself permission to rest deeply, knowing that peace and sleep are yours to claim. May your dreams be calm, curious, and full of gentle wonder. And there you have it, little dreamer, another tale, tucked in and told, like a blanket of stars across your mind. If you're still awake, well, bless your stamina. And if you somehow forgot to tap, like, or subscribe earlier, go ahead and do it now, before the dreams pull you under. I'll be right here, waiting in the next story. Until then, sleep well and sail gently.